In American society, money is a taboo topic. We're taught at a young age it's improper to talk about it, but we're also bombarded with messages about the power and importance of money in our everyday lives. And by not talking about it, we miss out on the skills and lessons we need to effectively understand and financially plan. That changes today. Welcome to Money Tales. Hosted by Sandy Brager and Cami Doder, Money Tales brings more than 35 years of combined professional experience in personal finance to demystify money and demonstrate what it's like to speak openly about personal financial matters. Join us each episode as they interview modern-day movers and shakers about how money decisions intertwine with their daily lives in order to give you better insight into productive financial conversations. Subscribe today and register for our blog Fathom at aspiriant.com/podcasts to increase your money mojo. And now, here's Cami and Sandy.
This episode of Money Tales is all about creatively creating films to help change the world for the better. Catherine Gray is our guest this week on the podcast. Catherine is an advertising professional turned movie producer. Her most recent film, titled Show Her the Money, is raising the awareness of how underfunded women are in the startup world. As we've talked about before, only 2% of venture capital dollars are invested in women-owned businesses. Catherine's goal with this new film is to educate women and men about venture capital, about the outsized discrepancies of investments not going to women, and, with that, changing our culture through film and media. Let me tell you more about Catherine. She has produced, co-produced, and directed several documentaries, including I Can't Marry You, Millionaire's True Stories, and several LGBTQ films for Logo. Catherine is also an author, TEDx speaker, founder of She Angel Investors, and co-founder of the nonprofit She Angels Foundation. Be sure to check out her podcast series called Invest in Her.
Here are 3 key money topics Catherine hits on in this conversation. First, how and why she's putting the spotlight on women-founded venture funds. Second, how successful fundraising for any project is all about creating strong relationships with like-minded people and bringing creativity and ingenuity to the table. And third, how there are a variety of ways to invest in private companies and the barriers to entry aren't as high as most people think. We hope you share this episode with a friend, and please subscribe to Money Tales on your favorite podcast platform. Now on to our conversation with Catherine Gray.
Welcome to the Money Tales podcast. I'm Cami Doder.
And I'm Sandy Brager. Cami, I wanted to share about a recent client experience. I work with a client who I've worked with for decades, and she has joined the board of a public company recently. So we've been doing a lot of planning around that.
That's so exciting.
It's very exciting. This is not the first board that she's been a part of. She's a serial board member. But every time there's a new opportunity that she takes advantage of, there's so many unique and exciting planning opportunities. So one of the things that we're looking at was the equity-based compensation that she would be receiving as part of this board membership. In addition to receiving some cash, she'll receive restricted stock grants over the years, and she will have an opportunity to invest in a deferred compensation plan where she can defer part of her cash compensation without paying tax on it first, kind of like a 401k idea. And then she can make an election about how that gets paid out later on. So it's been pretty exciting. The company wants her to keep a certain amount invested in the company stock, just like they require of other board members. So we've been looking through that. Something that a lot of people are surprised to learn about compensation that you receive when you're on a board is that it's self-employment compensation. It's not W-2 compensation. And this opens up the door for some really interesting retirement planning opportunities. We've been looking at all of this with her over the course of the last week, and it's been really fun. And I love it. It's like you have these little pieces to a puzzle and trying to figure out the puzzle that fits for her based on all the things that she's up to and wants to do and what's most important in her life.
We love solving the puzzle. And it's interesting when you were sharing, of course, I assume there's equity and other monetary compensation, but the deferred comp plan, that surprised me. And I think that's a great benefit for a board member.
It is, especially if you're trying to accumulate a minimum holding requirement in the company stock, because you can purchase the stock through there. So it's a nice tax efficient way to be able to do that with the compensation she's being paid.
Thanks for sharing, Sandy. Well, it is my pleasure to welcome our guest today on Money Tales, Catherine Gray. We're really excited to have this conversation.
Thank you, Cammie, Sandy. So great to be here with you all. It's something I love talking about because we have the movie out called Show Her the Money. So we are always talking about money every day with regard to women.
We know this is going to be a great conversation. Catherine, would you start us off by providing a brief introduction and sharing a couple pivotal moments that have taken place in your life that really influence who you are today?
I recently am the producer of Show Her the Money that I just mentioned. And it's a movie that's out right now on a 50-city tour, or at least it started off as a 50-city tour and looks like it's going to be a 100-city tour.
Fantastic.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I call it a movie and a movement. So I have a new word for that, and it's a Moviement. So I call it a Moviement. And it's really about raising awareness about how underfunded women are. So that was really a pivotal time for me to decide what I was going to do with my life. Is I was putting on a women's empowerment event and somehow come to the realization that women were getting only 2% of venture capital and men were getting 98%. First of all, I thought, we're only getting 2%? We're more than 50% of the population. This is crazy. And what is venture capital? And then I thought, wow, it's so interesting. So many smart, accomplished men and women did not know what venture capital was either. And I thought, this is a movie. We have to make a movie. You know, I'm a big believer it's film and television that helps change culture because it raises awareness. And once you're aware, you can't be unaware. And so what we're doing with the movie is educating. Our focus is women, but men and women about what is venture capital, why are women only getting 2%, and how are we going to change that? And that's really what the movement's about, taking the film on the road. People seem to be really embracing and loving the film because we made it engaging in storytelling and entertaining way for people to understand what venture is. Because you might think, oh, that sounds like a very dry conversation. But when you put it in a movie and you realize it's about people and about our future and what the future products and services are going to be and how it's going to affect all of us and the planet, well, then it becomes fascinating. And that's what we want to do, engage people in these stories of basically three types of women are showcased in the film. So the women that are starting venture capital funds, which I consider them the real rock stars of the industry because they are the unsung heroes that basically nobody knows about, but our film is trying to shed light on them. And they're out there raising $25, $50, $100 million to create these venture funds to fund women. And they're also very focused on funding other overlooked communities like BIPOC and LGBTQ. And so these women-founded funds are really the game changer key to changing this 2%. But what we need is more women and men investing in these women-founded funds. But predominantly, we're out there explaining this to women because they have been lacking in jumping into venture capital and angel investing. Some people say it's because of they're risk averse. I think it's more that they haven't been educated on it.
Yeah, exposure.
If they just understood what it's about and how heart-centered it is about real people and real stories, I think that more women would invest in this asset class, knowing that it can be very lucrative and very impactful. And so that's really the message of the movement. And the reason that I did it was just becoming aware of it and feeling like a film was the answer to telling this story that hasn't been told.
Catherine, you're demonstrating you are about passion and purpose. Can we go back in time? When you were growing up, when did you start learning about money? Because you're really passionate about it now. You've got a podcast, Invest in Her. You've got this movie. You do a lot of things when it really is about helping people embrace understanding and literacy around money. When did it mean anything to you as a child?
Gee, I don't know as a child, but I guess in my young 20s, when I started to have a super successful career in advertising, I don't know if it's something I read because I don't feel like I got it from my family, but just about always putting money away to invest. And then, of course, paying your bills and then having the rest to play. And I've always thought it was really important to have that play part as well. But invest first. Otherwise, you're not paying yourself for all the work that you're doing. And so also, I wanted to grow that money. So that was always important. I think I learned it. I read a lot of books about it.
So that's interesting. When you're starting your career, you knew the importance of investing, but didn't necessarily know how to do it. You started reading and learning. And then at one point, we're meeting you now, you're on the other side of it. You decide to become a movie producer, which requires a lot of money and a lot of money conversation. So fill in that gap for us, Catherine, about working in the advertising world and then making your way into deciding to put money behind a movie project and maybe more than one.
Sure. So my very first movie was called I Can't Marry You. It was about same-sex marriage. I felt like it was really important that we showcase how our LGBTQ families were just like anybody else's. And I thought by doing that and having that on PBS, that's where it aired, that we would reach the average American to let them see into the households of LGBTQ people who had been together 10, 20, up to 50 years without being married, and how unfair it was that they didn't get the 1,000 federal rights and benefits and protections of marriage. And my own gay people said to me, "You're crazy. That'll never happen." But I do feel like I got that download like I did with this movie, and I just knew it had to be made. Actually, I financed that myself, but then also got some sponsors. Once we got it on PBS, I had to go out and get sponsors. And being in advertising had really taught me how to fundraise. So all these years later, and I have done some other films in between, but as far as activist films, this was my next one, was Show Her the Money. And for this one, I raised over $1 million for not just creating the movie, but also the publicity and the tour. So I got a sponsor for the tour. Really grateful. We have Wells Fargo as a sponsor so that we could take it around the world and really educate and enlighten people. So it's been a journey, but as a producer, it's also about fundraising.
Would you tell us a little bit more about fundraising? Fundraising is having very personal money conversations with people. And I'd love to understand how you go about it and what are the opportunities for folks to learn from your experiences.
I do a keynote called Connecting to Millions. And what I really try to impart on entrepreneurs who are always having to raise money and these fund managers that are raising money is that we shouldn't look at it as a drudgery. We should look at it as a actually fun opportunity to go out and meet the most amazing people on the planet. And so when you go into angel groups or you're going into family offices, meeting them at conventions or events, meeting angel investors in any capacity or maybe general partners at venture capital firms, you are meeting the most incredibly smart people, the most interesting people. So you should look at it as this incredible opportunity to go out and meet the most brilliant people, get to know them, let them get to know you, because fundraising is about relationships.
I was just thinking that as you were talking. It sure is.
100% about relationships. And entrepreneurs need to get that. It's not about shooting somebody your deck on LinkedIn and hoping they're going to throw money at you. They're not. It's about getting to know the founder, like the founder, believe in the founder. That's what it's about. But we shouldn't make it a drudgery, and entrepreneurs should go out and meet potential investors long before they need the money. So not when they're desperate. No one's giving money to somebody that comes in and says, "Oh my God, I'm about to close my doors. Could you give me 50,000?" It's not happening. So the most important thing is building relationships with people that believe in you and believe in what you're doing. And you want to attract like-minded money. Usually when somebody invests in what you're doing, you're going to be in there with them for a long time. It's almost like a marriage. So it's got to be people that fuel you, that you like, they like you enjoy working with them, you enjoy them being in your sphere. They bring more than money to the table. They open doors, introductions, resources. That's the kind of investor you want. It's a partnership. And so looking at it more, I always say like a scavenger hunt when you're looking for funding instead of making it a drudgery.
Those are all really important attributes, and they make a lot of sense in the venture world where you're looking for investors who are going to invest in your business, who are going to open those doors and help you achieve a return on that investment. I imagine raising money for a film isn't quite the same because that hurdle of having a return on the film, if you're looking for a monetary return, can be higher. So, what was your experience on the film raising aspect of your movement, specifically around Show Her the Money?
So I always kid about here I am making a movie and raising money for a movie about how hard it is to raise money.
A little bit of a meta loop in there.
Yeah. Is that a dichotomy or what? So what happened was with this, you're right. What I tried to do is raise it in 3 different ways for this movie. And any business can raise money in different types of manners, not all one way, not all angel investing or not all an SBA loan, but maybe a combination of things. So for us, what I did first was find like-minded people that said, you know what? We don't know if we're getting a return on this. And if it ends up being a tax write-off, okay. But we really believe, like you do, Catherine, that this movie has to be made if we're ever going to make some change. So they really believed in the movement. Now, my goal is to get those investors paid back because I want to prove that documentaries can be a good investment. So that's first. The second thing I did was I did a big fundraiser, and that was for tax deductible donations. I aligned myself with From the Heart Productions that sponsors filmmakers and films. And so we raised a good portion of it through that, which then didn't dilute my investors. And then the third was I went out and got the corporate sponsor, Wells Fargo, for the tour, which again did not dilute the investors. So that's how we did it. About 50% was done that way and 50% as equity investors so that we didn't dilute the equity investment. And so now we'll be spending the next year or two or more with all the different ways that we're going to generate funds around the documentary. It's a new world out there, and the distribution model is totally different for indie films than it used to be. So wherein the major streaming networks really don't pay much or even pick up documentaries, which is a real mystery, you can do direct to consumer through platforms like Kinema that we're using. So we've done our 50 city live tour where people license the film to show it. And now our next phase is we'll be rolling it out to large corporations, to their employees, large organizations, to their members, so that millions of people can see the film in a pay-per-view, direct-to-consumer type model. And that really is the new model. Could it go to streaming distribution of the regular type down the road? Sure, it could. That's always a possibility. And then another thing we're doing is we've had a lot of requests for Show Her the Money with universities and colleges because they have entrepreneur programs and a lot of them don't even cover venture capital. So they love the film. They get to get $1 million film that is educating their students, and they've asked us to build out a curriculum to go with it. And so that's what we've done. And that will be another sector of our distribution as well.
So, Catherine, you're a pro at this, at having money conversations. How about in your personal life? Do you find it as easy? And will you share a little bit about that?
Somebody posted the other day something that I think, and that was that they said, people need to realize it's way more fun to invest and build wealth than it is to spend it. And so I thought, you know what? That's right. Every time you make an investment and you think of the potential growth, you get pretty excited. I think everybody does. And so that is something we should all put at the forefront and think about. That being said, I also like to spend it. I like to enjoy my life. And so, yeah, I think it's all about balance, don't you think? I could never be one of those people like, oh, I'm never going to spend a penny and have.
No way.
That's not happening. I have to do both.
Balance is good, especially when it's aligned with your values and what's most important to you.
Yeah.
I have a related question for you, Catherine. Having gone through the process of making this film, What was it about the film and the content that opened your eyes differently to money? And how has that impacted your personal relationship with money?
Well, I would say it opened my eyes to understand what venture capital is and how important it is and how lucrative it can be, that people make billions of dollars before it ever hits the public market. I would say I didn't really understand that before I learned all about this. So I think it's had a big run by the time it gets on the public market. Not to say we shouldn't own some stock on the public market, because I certainly do. But I think we should also be aware of how much money is made before it gets there, and that we should be a part of that too. So it's really opened my eyes to that. I'm a big believer, like I'm sure you all are as wealth advisors, that you should have a diversified portfolio. So when I talk about venture capital, I'm talking about people putting maybe 5%, 5 or 10% into that asset class. The other 90%, of course, is in your traditional, just because it is safer, but you should always have this part that can make a difference and could have a higher return than your typical investment, whether it be real estate or CDs or whatever it is your money is in. So I think it's all about diversification, and that this should be a part of it, because it's our duty as women to invest in women. And this is one of the best ways to do it, either as an angel investor directly into a company, because women do tend to be a better investment than men. So why not put our money behind that and something, a product or person that we really believe in? And then the venture capital, I particularly love, because it's kind of like a mutual fund. You're pooling your monies with other people into a fund with general partners. In my case, that I would invest in women that are running the fund that I think are brilliant, that look at the deal flow, they vet it for you. So you don't have to be the guru in that arena. You can allow them to know how to deploy that capital to the 10 or 20 or 30 that that fund is going to get behind. And then look at the successes of people like Pocket Sun, who's featured in our movie, SoGal Ventures. Perfect example, amazingly brilliant young woman. And I do believe what she says about it's always been older white men that have been running these venture funds. How do they know what a young woman wants as far as a product or service? She is a young woman. She knows what they want. Of course, she has a great intuition of what to invest in as far as that goes. So just so happy to see more women becoming the fund managers, and more women realizing that they should be putting money into these female founded venture capital funds to fund women. And like I said, also LGBTQ and BIPOC, these underserved communities that have all these amazing ideas and innovations that if they don't get made, it will negatively impact the planet. But we can be the heroes in this scenario. We can get behind these people and invest in them, and it will help make the world a better place, leave our legacy, and improve our portfolio.
You brought up modeling. So you're modeling future behavior, which is so important. For those of us who don't have the financial resources to invest in a venture fund or an angel fund, what's one or two pieces of insight, idea that you would have that we could do to still impact and change the momentum in a better direction?
Well, for one, I just want to say that the film really has broken the myth that people have to have a lot of money to invest in venture capital. Not the case. These women founded funds accept as little as $25,000. It's not even paid up front. Sometimes it's over a couple of years. It could be from someone's IRA. I just want to start with that.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, way more palatable than people think. The second thing is, if you don't have that, there are certainly other ways you can invest, as little bit as $100 or $500 or $1,000 in equity crowdfunding, which thanks to Obama and the Jobs Act, they democratized the ability for people to be able to invest in other people's ideas and innovations through equity crowdfunding through platforms like I Fund Women. So that would be a great starting point. And then there are angel groups where they look at an investment of 1 to 5,000. So there's something for everyone to get started. And there's not that barrier to entry that people think there is. And like I said, not only can it be very lucrative and impactful, but just in a very exciting arena to step into. And once you're in it, it's something you just want to shout from the rooftops how engaging and fun and fascinating it really is.
What do you have to say about the risks of these types of investments, Catherine? Just guidance for people to be aware of, because it is a very exciting place to invest, but it's a place where people can really trip and fall and inadvertently hurt themselves.
Yeah. And one thing I've learned a lot about in the last couple of years being in this arena is that I do think, oddly enough, people tend to start with angel investing. Like, oh, I like this person. I like this product. Let me invest in them. I think that's very risky, especially if you're not a wealth expert, that you know how to vet them. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes people make. What I would say is this is why I really have grown fond of the venture capital funds, because here you've got smart, brilliant women with a background in finance that are going to find the deal flow and vet it for you. And then you're pooling your money with other people to give it more power. And then they're deploying it to the ones that they vet it for you. You don't have to do it for yourself. And then just by the very fact, just like a mutual fund, that they're investing in 10 or 20 or 30 different companies mitigates your risk. Only one or two or three of those have to really make it in order for you to get a good return. I know Azine at Emmeline Ventures, who's in the film, has mentioned that the typical return on a venture investment tends to be around 20% as opposed to the public market around 10%. That is a general average. It's not a guarantee.
Yeah, because there's some pretty big returns on either end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that.
And that does make it risk adverse, that it's more like a mutual fund when you're looking at a venture fund.
Yeah, we have more diversification in the delegation of management. Catherine, you mentioned the importance of impact on the money you're investing and the return. And so I'm curious, if we focus on Show Her the Money, how are you measuring the return on that investment? Not only from the dollars you've invested personally, but your time and efforts. Tell us about that.
Well, I think everyone that's involved in the film, and there's about 20 of us, everyone has said how rewarding it has been to be a part of this, because it is a movement. There's been a lot more reward than just financial. We also have a book coming out that features all the women that are part of the movie and the movement, because I realize what incredible stories they have. It's going to be a great book, Show Her the Money, the women of the movie and the movement. And there's lots of aspects to it that have been rewarding way over and above financial. Seeing more women invest, seeing more people start funds, all of these things, knowing that we're moving the needle and really creating an excitement around the globe about changing this. Because every time we educate women on it, they get super excited about it and they start participating in the change. And that is very fulfilling.
Oh, I can imagine.
Catherine, what do you most want to do that you haven't done yet?
I just want to get further distribution of the film. And my next project is that I want to do a spin-off docuseries, because I think there are so many women funds that I would like to showcase, and the women that are investing, that are seeking funding from them, that I'm excited about that show. That's something that's on my plate for next.
Catherine, it sounds thrilling. Tell us, what's your next money conversation going to be, and who's it going to be with?
My next money conversation is going to be with companies about the docuseries and about sponsoring our educational program to provide the film and a curriculum that we've built with it to distribute to universities, colleges, and high schools around the world.
Sounds like a great conversation, a lot of them to be had. Catherine, where is the best place for our listeners to find you?
Best place is to reach out to me on LinkedIn, Catherine with a C, Gray with an A. I'm easy to find. And I have the Invest in Her podcast. They can look me up through the podcast. And of course, besides my main site, which is sheangelinvestors.com, I am also can be found through our movie site, which is showherthemoneymovie.com. And showherthemoneymovie.com has a resources page, so your listeners can go there and learn about venture and angel investing. We have workshops, we have other podcasts, we have books, we have events. So we want people to join the movement, come see a screening. They're all on the site, or host a screening. So yeah, I'd love to engage with your listeners and appreciate the opportunity to be on with you today.
Catherine, thank you very much. I love the Moviement. It's exciting and you're making great ground. So congratulations.
Thank you both so much.
Thanks for listening to the Money Tales podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, share it with someone you think would benefit from listening. And leave us a review on your favorite podcasting platform. Your ratings and reviews help more people find our podcast. If you're inspired to gain clarity and peace of mind about financial matters, don't hesitate to reach out to our team at Aspiriant. Go to aspiriant.com/start a dialogue. Or you can email Sandy and me at podcasts@aspiriant.com. See you next time.